Oh, Chantel? Nope. So from across Canada, we are all related to and standing on Mother Earth. And we have Indigenous relatives, brothers and sisters who have been here before colonization. And they were taking care of and supporting the land and all the life on the land. So I just want to take 10 seconds and just recognize that what we are blessed with, or what we have in our hearts and in our minds, and how we can live this wonderful life we live in Canada, might not be possible, and is definitely standing on the shoulders of those who came before us and before colonization. So I've got a really nice window I'm looking at. Okay, thank you. Cass, can we have the next slide? So we're here today to look at the biodiversity strategy. So this tagline, Action Now for Life on Earth, actually comes from the 2009 International Year of Biodiversity. What we're trying to do today is frame what we would like to see in the strategy based on what we have been supplied with from the federal government. So hopefully this is a good conversation. It's not a lot of different people talking. And if anyone in any of these slides wants to jump in and contribute something, that's great. I would appreciate it. And as we're talking, if you think of anything or anything comes up, or whatever is going on, if you want to stick it in the chat or also speak it. So we're going to try to do an Otter AI of this meeting, so that when we're trying to supply the comments to the federal government, we have a good base to start with. So next slide, please, Cass. So really briefly, we are the RCEN Biodiversity Caucus. There's several of the steering committee members here on the call today. So hopefully, if you're not already on our mailing list, you'll jump on that mailing list, even for our friends across the oceans or across the Salish seas, who would like to join and become, at least be on the mailing list for OEN. So what we're trying to really do right now is domesticize the international agenda to a large degree, and really working. So we work at the international level with the Convention on Biological Diversity. We had 2 delegates in Montreal and have been submitting comments all the way along on the Global Biodiversity Framework and other elements of the Convention on Biodiversity. But we do try to really reach out and engage Canadians where they sit through the environmental network, through the Canadian Environmental Network. So we're hoping everyone here, if you're not already involved, you can get involved. Next slide, please. So the words on the left hand, so for me, it's the left-hand side, I guess it's left for you too, are directly from the consultation paper that's been circulated by the federal government. So what we're going to try to do today is look a little bit at the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the resources from the Convention on Biodiversity, with the idea of using some of these to help inform what we're going to say to the federal government. We're going to take a little bit more of a deeper dive into the surveys and the survey questions and the open-ended questions. And then we're going to go a little bit deeper and discuss some of the constructs that the federal government had brought to the table, again, in this discussion paper. And then how do we add our voices to this, and how do we move forward? So next slide. And if anyone has any question anywhere along, just let me know. Or just raise your hand. I can't see anything except the slide deck now, so I'm kind of useless. But so I wanted to ask, in this crowd, in this room, as we're sitting here, have you or your organization begun to or have already developed what you see as necessary for inclusion in the 2030 strategy? So can we just have a show of hands? Is there a way I can see that even? Can you just, like, Cass, I don't know if you can. I don't know how to do this. But has anyone started making comments or read the documents fully, or is your organization trying to do something, or anybody? Not
grouping.
view options. Let's try that.
Yeah, no, I was just, yeah.
Exit full screen. Maybe I exit full screen. There we go. So if you can stick in the chat, if you grouping, yeah. Are you doing something?
I was just raising my hand to say we've looked at and some other people maybe.
Yeah. So that, like, if you can just, like, I don't know how to do a poll. So why I'm asking that question is I'm going to go into some of the background here, and I don't want to bore people with the background if I don't, it's not bore people. I don't want to talk about background too much if we can just get to the meat of the content. So I was thinking about it. I used to chat with government stuff. Oh, that's great. That's great. So there's some stuff coming in. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue with what we kind of prepared for today. This is hard to do when you don't know where people are, benchmarking where people are at for this conversation. But can we have the next slide, Cass, please? So these are the 23 targets from the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So these are high level. There's four goals and 23 targets. And then there's a plethora of different indicators too. So really what we're trying to do in the last strategy, the federal government kind of took what the HE goals and targets were. They put them in another kind of shape. And then it wasn't directly correlated with the HE goals and target. So one of the directions that the CBD has given, or that has been agreed to, is that as closely as possible, or as much as possible, target one, land and sea change, spatial planning, our target one is their target one. So trying to make that correlation is what I believe is supposed to be happening. And maybe Fred or Ole could probably help me correct me if I'm wrong. So that's my understanding of it. So if we go to the next slide. So this is all based on the Conference of the Party 15 coming out of Montreal in December of last year. So on the bottom picture, you see Francis and Basile. They were co-chairs for the negotiations that took 4 years to the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And Basile, the lovely gentleman with the bow tie on, he is actually from the international policy branch for Canada. And he is wonderful to work with, and I'm very excited that we get to do this. But I just want to take a minute. So we have these 23 goals, but if you can just open that website for a second. So what we're doing is going to the CBD Global Biodiversity Framework portal on the website. So I'm waiting for Cass. Oh.
Just one second. Did you want me to open that website for you,
Yes.
Leslie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you? Yeah, we'll just do it this way for now.
Okay.
Did I say I was going to open it, Cass?
Yep, that's okay.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is the landing page for the framework. So if you go to the, I see why I was going to do it.
Do you want me to give you the power?
Sure, let's do that just for a minute here. I'm going to go to mine. Give me the power. Dun, dun.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
And 1 second, Natalie, I will grab that link for you.
Okay, why? There we go. Being stubborn. Where'd you go?
And I just put the link in the chat for anybody who wants to look at it on their own screen as well.
I can't find it. Okay, where are you? Hey, do you see that? You see the UN Biodiversity Conference? Is that what you're seeing?
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Okay, yay. So this is a really good site. If you go through here and you start reading this, so this is the convention's portal for the for the KMGBF. But what I wanted to, so we could just go through this for a couple hours, but all we're going to do is go to, so I wanted to underscore this just for a second. So this idea of the vision and the mission. So the 2030 mission is what the biodiversity framework is based upon, but the vision goes to 2050. So theoretically, and you could probably have some debate about it, all of the targets have a 2030 deadline. So I just wanted to underscore that. So I don't know if it makes sense to try to compare that or bring that into the national strategy. I'm not sure, but that's one. So, and we're just going to look really quickly at the goals. So there are 4 goals, and they basically reflect the way the CBD views the world, including access to resources. So this is really the page that I want to get into. So this is the, hang on, I can't get rid of, these are the guidance for the targets. So the way the targets are organized is into 3 categories: reducing threats. I'm sorry if I'm making anyone nauseous. Meeting people's needs through sustainable use and benefit sharing. And then tools and solutions for implementation and mainstreaming. So within this, if you click on any one of the targets, you get another drop down into, so this target 14, the multiple values of biodiversity are integrated into the decision making at all levels. So it goes through why is the target important, explanation of the target and its elements, link to other elements in KMGBF, guiding questions for national target setting. So this is really the one I wanted to kind of trigger for us particularly, is when we're looking at what we're trying to tell the government, in the longer haul, not right now, in the longer haul, we can do some work where we're looking at the goals and targets, and what does this mean? What are the key national planning instruments? What gaps in terms of instruments? How are the business and finance? So we can really use this as a signpost for how we're going to move forward with trying to help the federal government develop its strategy. So at this point, it's not to do all that work. At this, in my mind, I don't think it's to do all the work. At this point, it's to say, hey, we really think you should be using the information from the CBD to help inform our national target setting in Canada. So what the CBD has kind of given us here is a, hey, we're just pointing back up to them to help enable that. So it is a little complicated and it is a little complex, but it does start making more sense, right? So if you're trying to, so if we go back to another target, I'm just going to take a target I'm sorry if I'm making anyone nauseous.
No, you're not. You're good.
Okay. Well, I hate watching people scroll on my screen. So this is here. So let's take target 2, ensure that by 2030, at least 30% of areas of degraded terrestrial, inland water, and marine and coastal ecosystem are being restored, basically. So then you go to this target, and it tells us why is it important, explanation of the target and its elements, link to other ones, questions for national target setting. So again, it really starts making a lot of sense. So right now, I believe what they're asking us for is not so much what should they be, it's what should we be doing, right? So we're trying to help them develop their methodology and framework. So when they start spitting out what the goals and targets will be and how they're going to do this, they've accounted for all these things. So, so again, this is like, if you're a geek out on this stuff, this is really awesome stuff to have available to us. But I'm going to leave that at that, because I could just sit and go through all of this, but I highly encourage everyone to go do a bit of a deep dive into this. And then I'm just going to do one more. So this is the communication, education, and awareness work. So this is communication to education and public awareness is really, it's SEPA. It's the SEPA program through the Convention on Biodiversity. So this bundle of outcomes, there's also, I think, a separate decision just on communication and it's on SEPA. This becomes part of what we're trying to do. So when I think of RCEN and our caucus, we're striving to meet these, whatever G is in the EFG7 things. This is part of what we would be trying to do within the caucus, is trying to be an arm of SEPA for the CBD, but also for the feds to some degree. So does anyone want to throw anything on the table right now while Cass takes back control of this? I'm going to stop sharing. Am I going too fast, too slow? Anyone? I feel like I'm talking to.
You're doing
Well,
great.
Oh, thank you. Feedback.
Leslie,
Yes.
Leslie, I could just say, you know, for people who might not have been with RCEN for a while, the communication part is huge for our organization. You know, being a network, it's one of the things that we do really, really well. And traditionally, we have done the lion's share of environmental education across the country. And so this gives us a chance to, you know, to continue that. And it's a hugely important function.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Sheila. And RCN does it, but it's our members who make it happen, right? So RCN is really an organization about the members. It's not about it itself. So, but okay, so can we go on to the next slide? So we're going to look now. So that's a little bit on the CBD, where it comes from, that whole nosh of stuff out there. So now we're going to have a little, I don't like using that word. Now we're going to have a peek at the survey and the questions. So this is specifically what the federal government has kind of put out there for our consumption. So the survey itself has 8 questions, and they are on a like pick 5, pick 3. The most of the survey, there's 8 survey questions, where if you decide to go in and do that, it might take you, if you're going to be thoughtful and really read it all and try to figure it out, it might take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes maximum. There's also on the portal, there's 9 open-ended questions. And these, if you're going to respond to those, they probably deserve a little bit more of thought. And on the portal itself, you're allowed to put up to 1,000 words in response to those questions. What we are going to try to do, based on everything that you guys give us, and based on what we hear, so this is still going forward, there's still more work for us to do, is to submit some comments on these open-ended questions, and then even a little bit more. So Cass, if you can go to the next slide, please. So these are the survey questions. The 8 questions is pretty straightforward. And then, so they're kind of color coded here. That's not the way they've done it, but I just did that so we could really see what those questions were. And in a second, we're going to open a blank form of the survey, not quite yet, but we're going to open a blank form of the survey so that you can see what those, you know, what is it asking you? So, and we do have we downloaded and made a copy of the blank survey form. So we should probably post that to the website, or definitely email it out if everyone wants to receive that. If you were at the last session, you might have already received it. But if you can go to the next slide, Cass. So these are the open-ended questions. So they do take a little bit more thought, and for me they do. I mean, maybe for some it would be much easier, but I tend to see this all as very integrated and very much in a system. So the open-ended questions, I'm hoping we can at least give that to the federal government with our individual names or our organizations associated with that response going forward. And could you open the other document, Cass? Or the document, the draft document?
Sure, just 1 second.
Thank you. So these are no other one, the Word doc.
This is the Word doc.
Is it
But-
really?
Yeah, it's just it looks a little different because I'm on.
Oh, okay. Keep
Okay.
going then. Oh, there they are. Okay, there. See, they were highlighted in my document. So, okay, so now I'm going to put glasses on. So I'm just going to do one. So this is, so the beginning is demographics. I lied. There's some demographic information in the beginning. Keep going, and it's just like who you are, where you coming from, whatever. So then the content questions were, so on that first slide, in your opinion, what thematic areas of KMGBF should Canada prioritize and focus efforts on? And please select up to 5. So it kind of tells you what they're kind of thinking. This is kind of the direction they're going in, what their considerations are, or probably has some relationship to the last and National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, or goals and targets till 2020. But so I don't know, like, I mean, theoretically, we could try to do this. We could all do it individually, but if there was a way we want to come together and say, well, us 25 or 1,000 or 50 billion people think these are the things that are priorities. And it might be a good idea to at least have a conversation amongst organizations and particularly the networks, because like if there's something that really wouldn't make any sense, we want to make sure we're not doing that. And if we really do feel there are more important areas that we should be focusing on, maybe we need to do that collectively. I'm not clear how they're making this decision. All might have a sense of this, but I am not clear. So Old, can you inform anything around this, like, or what you think might occur if you're still here? Is Old still here? Oh, I think we lost it. Oh, and Goal is gone, isn't he? Okay. So, John, do you have a sense? So John used to work for Stats Canada. This is kind of a statistical kind of thing, surveying. But John, do you have any idea? Like, would it be any benefit to us trying to figure out how to do this collectively, or just leave it alone? Is it way too much to try? Oh,
I'm sorry, John, we can't hear you. You're temporarily muted.
Oh,
here we go.
sorry. Wonderful technology when it works. And when you use it, you press the right button.
Yes.
Anyway, I would suggest a group effort that there's an initial discussion, people go away, and maybe 2 or 3 meetings refine their thoughts based upon the discussion, but it's always followed by individual reflection. And obviously, in that format, certainly written documents, if one wants to contribute a written document about outlining their position or detailing their position, it would be welcome. And then gradually move to a point of consensus. Or the other way is to simply put it up to a vote. If not a consensus, then that's the last option.
Yeah, okay, thank you, John. So each of these 8 questions, if you want to scroll for a little bit, make me nauseous. Bleh. So again, there's select up to 5. So in which of the following do you think Canada is already making noticeable progress? Like factoring biodiversity into policy and business decision making at all levels, appropriate representation and engagement. So these are all like good questions. It's a survey though, so it's just a point on a dot on the map. But so that's one thought we can figure out. Do we want to try to do this collectively? Do we all want to go away, or at least let each other know? So I'm willing to do it as Leslie Adams living in Georgetown as an individual for the survey, and then let everyone know. Like maybe there's some way, Cass, we can set up some type of something on somewhere, all these different platforms. That we could all dump what we put in as the survey answers, if that's something people want to try to do. So at least we have a sense of what's going on. So that's one thing possibly. And then can you scroll down to the questions? So for the open-ended questions, keep going. So there we go. So these are, so in the survey, this is the direct language off of the survey. So if you have further views you wish to convey on the questions included in the discussion paper, please, they don't want identifying information in these responses. So they're supposed to be unattributed. But what are the key features of a successful 2030 biodiversity strategy? What are the most significant challenges to achieve the KMGBF in Canada? So again, it's kind of saying, where do we go? What do we do? How do we get there? What's good? What's bad? But maybe, so one of the things I would like to do is kind of divvy these up, like at least between the caucus steering committee, but to try to say, like if you can look at these, so you'll have a copy of this, you'll have a copy of the slide deck, you'll have copies of everything, you'll have too many copies, won't know what to do anymore, and say, hey, I'm kind of into this first one, if you want to. So what I'm trying to do is build little bits of teams or working groups or something where someone goes, ooh, like John, I know where John's not capacity, but is where he's really good at. So I know, overarching tools and solutions are critical for making progress across multiple targets. So what is that overarching indicator that we would need? And so I'm really interested in that. But so this document, everyone's getting, for sure. And we should probably put it on the RCN caucus webpage, Cass, too, at some point, if no one has any objections. But is there any questions before I talk some more? Soon you're all going to be talking. Okay, I'm going to ask you to go back to the slide deck, please, Cass. And Cass is wonderful at doing all this. Let's see what I got. I don't remember what my next slides were. I think it might be, and now we're going to go to the other document, unfortunately, Cass. Okay, so that's kind of the open-ended questions that have had a bit of a meltdown. So going a little bit further now. So you see the ego to eco. So this is me showing my stripes here a little bit. I really want to move this towards an ecocentric approach or eco-democracy, not a individualistic man at the top, everything else is below us. But so that's the image. So we kind of have discussed responding to the survey and the open-ended questions. Love to get a sense of that. Maybe we can go around the room in a minute. But so in the document, there's also these guiding principles, cross-cutting issues. I'm really concerned with the voices, sector groups, individuals. What do we need to do to make sure everyone who wants to participate and maybe that's a longer term question. Maybe that's not for this kick at the can, because we'll see the first final draft probably in middle to late fall of this year. So we won't see what the goals and targets will look like until that point. But how do we get to the people who we rarely hear from? And then this idea of what is missing and what needs to be included that they haven't thought of. So this is really us looking at it critically and saying, oh, I'd really like if they included a section on how you can use this within a non-urban or within a faith-based community. Like, how are you reaching into faith-based community and really trying to look at stewardship or kinship with nature? Or if you start looking into different religious ethos, everyone has something to do with nature, Mother Earth. Like there's always something there. It's just a different flavor. I actually done I had done through OEN, when I was the chair of OEN, I had gone to a session for an Islamic community where I walked in and the room was split in half. On one side was the women and children, and on the other side was the men. And you kind of spoke in the middle. And I was there with Islamic scholars. And I started listening to the interpretation of the Quran and kind of went, I think I might be like Muslim. Just the way they were expressing, and rocks and the faith of the rocks and the rights of the rock. I kind of went, oh, very, very interesting when you start looking at it through that lens. But so if we go to the next slide, so these are some of the questions I think we need to do. So again, this is building out on that a little bit. So this first one, we're going to open the government document in a second, but it's so the approach they're bringing forward, the upholding the guiding principles in the consultation document. So we're going to look at those in a second. And so you got to kind of look at the guiding principles and the cross-cutting issues. And we also want to look at the finances, what they're saying are financial things they're doing to support the biodiversity framework. But is it really getting to the meat or the bones? Are we putting good bones down before we try to dress it up? Or is the soil healthy enough so when we plant our seeds, we're going to get the growth we want? Or are the principles, are the cross-cutting challenges and opportunities are the way they frame them? And for sure, the investments, I'm sure we'll all see things in there. So this is really from their document. And then do they hold the voice of other people? I'm looked at it and I don't find it. But and what elements are there? Is there anything in what they're saying right now that should not be included? So can you open the consultation doc, the PDF, for a second? And I think we even determined what pages we're going to before we started. There we go. Okay, so this is so that piece on the slide in the previous one, it's right here. So change the strategy. No. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna skip what I was gonna say. So these are the guiding principles: committing to urgent and ambitious action, seeing transformative change, taking a comprehensive whole of society approach, taking an all of government approach, walking the path to reconciliation, making space for multiple ways of knowing. These are their guiding principles that they want to make sure they're reflecting in their goals and targets they bring forward. So if you split this up into, like, there's 6 of them, 1, 2, 3, 6 if we said, okay, those 6 things, so how would you go about making sure you're committing to urgent and ambitious action? So they kind of justify, so I don't think what they've written in the non-highlighted words are necessarily how, it's a justification. So if we think of this critically, how do they commit to urgent and ambitious action, and tell them what we think, right? And this is outside of the questions they're asking us. They're asking us to, in my mind, what they're doing is they're saying, are we doing this when we're asking you these questions? How is it following through? I don't see it following through, honestly. So how would it follow through? What do they need to do? And I'm going to go back to communication, education, and public awareness, and what RCN does best. And this idea of outreach and education. So those are the critical, no, what are they? I'm losing my mind. Guiding principles, thank you. She's pointing it to it for me. So can you go down to the next page? We kind of underscored. Oh, let's stop. Oh no, keep going. And you should all read this. I'll say that again, because I started having a little bit of a hard time reading some of the content in here saying, oh yes, we've done this. And you're kind of going, I don't know if I agree with that. And I think we've got to not be too Canadian and maybe be a little bit more American in some ways and call out what we see, not as being, oh, you're lying, but just say, well, I'm not sure I see that, right? Always being diplomatic and considerate. So these are the cross-cutting challenges and opportunities as they're seeing them. So coordination and collaboration. That's a cross-cutting challenge to enabling the strategy, creating the strategy, and it's also an opportunity. So what are the tools or tips? So this is where, from an RCN perspective, we can kind of help the federal government understand that we can enable this strategy to a good degree if we get the support we need from the federal government. And that goes across, like, is there a way we could go back to a core contribution agreement? And I'm brave, I will say it, say it outright. From the caucus, from the groups, from the affiliates, whatever it is that we'd like to see a way that we will commit to doing ABCD if we have support for a core contribution agreement. So you'd have a quarter time coordinator for each of the, like this whole lane that we can have a conversation on. So science and data. I think there's some data geeks in this room for sure. That would have a lot to say about that. Can you go down to the next page, please, Cass? So engagement and reconciliation with Indigenous people. Is there anyone in this room right now who is Indigenous? If you could raise your hand and let us know. Okay, I am not seeing anyone, but there is lots of capacity to do this. And from a rights of Mother Earth, non-human rights, rights of nature perspective, in Canada, the idea of reconciliation cannot really happen without reconciling with Mother Earth as well. So I believe that's part of a conversation we could be saying to the federal government as well. So we're not speaking for Indigenous community in Canada, but we're
Facilitating.
yeah. So so
Sorry.
that's okay, John.
I should mute.
That's good. So, and then the next one is public awareness and mainstreaming. That definitely we could be the mainstreamers par excellence. And I think, is there any more than that, Cass? I'm not recalling right now. No. So that's the end of the idea of cross-cutting issues. And I believe there is lots more cross-cutting issues that aren't necessarily included in there. And a lot of it comes right out of, if you go to the CBD website and have a look at what they consider cross-cutting issues, there's lots more there. And then if you get into separate voices of people, we haven't even gone down that road at all. But so major groups on the CBD website include parliamentarians, which is very interesting. I'd love to have a run at trying to create a basket of stuff for judges. That would be wonderful. But parliamentarians, youth, indigenous and local community, I think businesses there now. And then you like laborers, there's a whole bunch of things you could do with that. But so again, when I look at this, I see other cross-cutting issues that maybe they haven't captured as well as they could. But so, and the last piece I wanted to point out on this is their finance side. If we can scroll down to the finance stuff. There, oh, no, okay, we're gonna go backwards. Here it is. Okay, go back up. See, I saw the pink go by before. So they're saying what they've presented in this document is how they've made investments into biodiversity. And yes, it's all reflective. So biodiversity is like sustainability, and I'm in the bandwidth of biodiversity, gene species ecosystems, ecocentrism, rights of nature. Moving that direction puts us right towards sustainability. We can't have sustainability unless we do that writ large. So when I start looking at a sample of federal investments in nature, so nature legacy and enhanced nature legacy, marine conservation targets, if you can scroll down, Cass, she's so good at this. Natural Climate Solution Fund and international finance commitments. So when I look at that, the one that it kind of starts playing around at, but I really want them to fund local government. I really want there to be a line in here somewhere. I don't know who it's from. I don't know where, or I know who it's from. I don't know how it goes, where it goes to. Like, I think I would love to have a conversation about that. And then how do they fund for mainstreaming? So those two pieces are something, and I would like to have by the end of this year, something that you could really say to them about financing in Canada. And again, some of this information comes out of what the Secretariat's been doing. So the subnational and local subnational government stuff is really well developed. And it's only like, if we can convince Canada, if we can convince our federal government that they should be supporting national biodiversity, local biodiversity strategies and action plans, and a way to really make this happen, that's when we're going to get a lot of pickup, because now everyone's aware of it. If you think of climate change and all the work that's been done around climate change and all the energy that's in the climate change convention, they both were open at the same time in 1992. They both come out of the Earth Summit in 1992. We should be able to make the case and not make the mistakes. And it is a very different creature for biodiversity to receive support resources the way climate change is receiving in Canada. Because by doing that, they're also going to address some of the climate change stuff, and some of that gets in here. So it does start becoming, this is complex even. Or I don't know if it's complex, it's complicated. This piece and that piece, like how does it all weave together? And then you have the SDGs, which Raj maybe is giggling about right now, but that's a whole other layer of all this stuff. So, okay, can we go back to the slides, Cass? So they, again, read this document, very good document. It's got a lot of good links in it too. So if you want to get into this heavily, you can just start going down. And I started going down some of the rabbit holes in writing these couple of slides. I went, oh my God, I could be here for days. But so the approach they're bringing forward, do those guiding principles actually, are they reflected in what they're asking us, and how can we make sure they're doing that? And what is missing as a guiding principle? Same goes for cross-cutting, challenges, opportunities. What else? What do we need to tell them? So we're not telling them what to do. We're saying this is the framework you need to be using to get to there. That federal investments, they've put that in there. Let's make a comment about it. What is there anything in there? And I haven't really looked at it through that lens. Is there stuff in there that shouldn't be in there? Like, should we be saying, no, don't do that? That's dangerous, or it's irrelevant, or too complex, or whatever it is. Like, is there something that we should be informing like that? And how are they holding space for all the different voices? I don't think they are. Honestly, I've looked at it several times now. I see glimmers, but I don't see it fully. So, and then these are kind of like danglers out there for me. If any of you had watched Minister Guilbeault, so that we have the link, if you want to see that. We should put all this stuff on our website somehow. But I think it's also on OEN's website possibly. But Minister Guilbeault, when they did the launch on the 15th of May, talked about the Biodiversity Act and wanting a Biodiversity Act by the next COP, which will be held in Turkey in 2024. I think it's October 2024. That's not far. Like, that's pretty close. That's around the corner, really, in reality.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and what roles? So, is there a role for that in here? Do we think there should be a role for that in here? Is that something like where does that fit into this? And what is what does that act look like? That's a whole other conversation to have on what do we think that act should look like. So, so these are questions I've when I've looked at, I said, well, what about this? What about that? Just from some of the stuff I've been thinking about. So I would really, 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 really like this to be a cross-government exercise. I want it to be a national strategy with all of government into it. I don't want it to be, well, I hope it's a national strategy, not a federal strategy. That's up to the provinces, and we all have to enable our provinces to come to the table to make it a national strategy. But what about finance? Like, how is finance being included in doing this? What role could we play to talk to finance? Like, we can go talk to ministers. They can't. These are staff people right now. We're able to reach to ministers and to try to have those conversations with staff and with ministers. But what about infrastructure, natural resources? Like, it just is human resources. Foreign affairs is huge. Foreign affairs is a huge one on this file. So, like, how do we, can we? So I want to make comments like that. I will make comments as Leslie, and I'm pretty sure I can get Sierra Club to come with me on the journey. So I think Sierra Club can make comments, but is there any comments like that that we as the RCN can submit? Not as RCN itself, but as the members of the caucus who have looked at this and say, yeah, I can sign on to all that. And do we make different letters? Is this 52 letters on all the different things we want to say that people can sign on to? Not comfortable with that, but comfortable with this. And then the last one I'm really interested in is, how does this shift towards human rights, rights of Mother Earth, like non-human rights? How we have to tell the federal government that. In my mind, we have to. So RCN has been playing around in this a little bit. The Sierra Club, through the international work on the biodiversity framework post 2020. So Chantel, John, Alex, I think he might have been involved. I know Ol was involved. We had submitted comments to the feds on rights of Mother Earth to make sure it was included in the global biodiversity framework. So I'm going to go, for me, this is has to happen. We have been successful with the Ontario. So Ontario has a Biodiversity Council and it has its own strategy. And we have language in the Ontario Biodiversity Strategy to explore novel concepts to enhance biodiversity outcomes, such as the rights of nature. So we've got a thin edge of the wedges in there. Now you're starting to push it open a little bit. So next slide. So now you guys got to start talking, and the people in this room who know me, no, I will go around and ask people to say things and just start throwing stuff on the table. So I think we need to figure out the way forward. I'm really glad Alex Spizbesky is here, so she might be able to give a hand. I think everyone in this group can definitely give hands on how do we figure this out and go forward. So there is strength in numbers. So each of our organizations, I know I can invoke Sierra Club to some degree to get involved and do some of these things. We have to look at, like, if there's something that yells and screams at you that you really want to dig into, like, I would love to see Ryu, if she's still here. I'm not sure if she's still here, but I would love to see the story, not the story, what's going on in Northern Alberta is like crazy stuff. What's going on in the prairies is crazy stuff. Like, it's just this whole different world. And John's got a lot of being in Manitoba. Anyways, things to dig into. We need to compare and contrast. I think someone's got to take a run at what the past strategy is and where it didn't quite work to make sure we don't do that again. And then we got to talk to lots of people about this. But I see a hand up and I have no idea whose hand it is. There's a hand.
From NBEN.
Yay.
Hi, I was just wondering, this day, who was it made for? Was it made for groups like ours, ENGOs? Was it also made for maybe the scientist side of people? Is it made for the smaller groups, the ones like my watershed groups that I'm usually constantly talking with? That's what I guess I was wondering about.
So are you talking about so I would say it's for everyone. That's the only, like, mainstreaming is trying to bring awareness, raise awareness to everyone so that we're all engaging and enabling it. And then so the way the caucuses worked for a long time, that was we take the CBD stuff, the Convention on Biodiversity stuff, communications, education, public awareness, the HE goals and targets, whatever that is, and we try to make that more common across. So it's kind of like doing what you did with climate change. So people now theoretically know what climate change is and know a little bit about the convention. And so it's trying to do that. So I guess I would ask you though, when you say, so there's the CBD stuff and then there's the national stuff.
Yeah, I
So-
meant the survey that you've been talking
Oh.
about for most of this call.
So the survey is put out by the federal government. It could be, you can do it as an individual, you can do it as an organization, you can do it for it's supposed to be for everyone. So, and then they will do a targeted consultation. So I'm going to ask on Monday, how do we have that how do we have that conversation with the federal government? Or Tuesday after Monday, so that they come back to us and have a conversation directly with us. So, and then, I mean, I would love if the New Brunswick NBN wants to have more of a conversation. I'm like, I will put my hand up and say, I'll come play with you a little bit. And there's other people on this call who would probably be more than willing to have that. So I know I'm a geek. I consider myself a geek or a groupie. I'm not sure which one, but on the CBD and particularly on the Convention on Biological Diversity. But I don't know if that's good for you. Okay. So okay, spread the word. And next slide, I think we're just about done. I should put numbers on the slide. Oh, next step. So we're going to compile what we hear today, at least, and share that with the federal government. The survey is open till July 14th. We will request a sector consultation with the federal government. This is kind of what you just asked me. And then the ECCC draft strategy should be ready for review. I think it's late fall, middle to late fall. And then, but so there's things going on at the same time with the act and that too. But okay, and then okay, so your turn. I'm shutting up, I'm closing my mic, and I'm going to give the floor back to Cass, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go through the same way I did last time. So I'm going to go from the bottom up this time. So Yoko, can you tell me one thing you would like to see or one thing you would like to contribute to in this exercise?
Well, that was a lot of information that I am really passionate about everything you talk about. So it will be really difficult for me to contribute, but I would like to contribute like to like recommendations, policy, everything. So I don't know if you saw my message in the text that when you were mentioning about local government is that so I'm involved in another like organization for climate change, but we also talk about biodiversity. But I think it's really important also to engage with local government. And so equally, it's like cities, C40 mayors, that is also really important to engage with not just cities, but mayors. So since local government is usually the decision makers more than the international level, and they make the most impact as well. So what I contribute, it is really about all the commitment, all the contributions that were really mentioned. Yeah, I'm really not like being really generic because I'm really interested in everything.
Awesome. That's great. So am I. So I have a lot of trouble. So okay, so I'm going to go now. I'm going so Ruping, do you see a role or too much? And you guys, so I'm just trying to get us all talking now a little bit. So,
Yeah, I guess I think that it would be good to have a biodiversity strategy that we can point to, but I guess one of the things I think is missing from the current strategy is there's not really a concrete goal or a concrete like it seems very, I don't know, a little bit generalized, like it's these ideas more than here's how we're going to approach it. Here's our goals, here's our evidence or any of that. There's not, I don't, as it stands, the strategy doesn't seem to have much of a clear path,
okay,
in my opinion, for how we're going to accomplish reversing biodiversity loss. So I think that's one thing I'd like to see more of in the strategy is, how do we approach this really big problem that we have, this really big challenge, but how do we approach it? How do we break it down into smaller steps instead of just general ideals that we want to accomplish?
So, and I just as a bit of a response to some of that is if we go into, so that GBF, the portal on the convention's website kind of starts getting to some of that. So there's a lot of backstory to everything that's there. And then we've got to recognize, so even in Canada, there's some of the information, not as much, I would say necessarily, but the backstory for the justification and what you need to do is kind of there to some degree, but it's not clarity in a straight linear path. It's kind of messy and all over the place. But that's a great comment. Like that is a great comment.
I mean, because one of the challenges we sometimes run across is that the federal government has very different ideas or has trouble getting cooperation from the provinces, from the local municipalities, from the people who are working on the ground. There's kind of that division. So I guess in terms of pathways, just like connections as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that is so, and that is part of it. So this funding idea for local government, it's also for subnational government. So the federal government is starting to try to do some of this work. The one of the things that you get a little nervous about is I do not personally want to see a transfer to provinces to do biodiversity work, and then all of a sudden it's in a slush fund for, I don't know, blowing something up more, just, or whatever it is. So I get what you're saying, and I think it's up to us in a lot of ways to kind of come together enable this stuff, right? And just manifest destiny nearly. It's but I appreciate very much. Oh, bye jet lagged Alex Spizveski. And she's happy to help. Yay. Okay, so Ruping, can I move on to Rosalind?
Yeah, sure. I have a wealth of things to say.
Woo!
Thank you so much, Leslie. I love listening to you and just the way that the issues are laid out and the kinds. I don't know that we have to be necessarily imprisoned by the government's, questions. Like, what are the questions that they want us to comment on? So the first thing, does the strategy talk about the drivers of biodiversity loss? Does it talk about the consumption, the changes in land use planning, the loss of habitats, the competition over resources, and also pollution that leads to biodiversity loss? We also need to, at some point, and I'm sure this was either discussed or is in the text somewhere. I have to review the text in a little more detail, but the urgency of addressing this issue also lies in the fact that many of our ecosystems are now at tipping points, and that the loss of biodiversity is only one dimension of that we don't know where those tipping points exactly are. We have to be humble before these changes, and recognize that we don't know everything, and we don't know what effects loss of species would ultimately have on humans. So that means taking into account the need for urgency. We need some time-bound, clear steps, avenues for accounting and auditing the changes that are brought in. So that means I've heard in some countries they're actually, and actually I've heard this in Canada too, that Statistics Canada is doing a national environmental audit. So they're looking all across the country to see, what do we have? Like, where are we at? And to try to set up a system so that we know who to hold accountable if those goals are not met, right? And what are the consequences for not reporting? What are the consequences for not reaching a particular goal? If we don't meet those targets, what might that mean for the environment? What might that mean for not only biodiversity, but our health and our own sustainability and our economy and employment and other things that matter, that biodiversity, provides, that nature provides. So, there's a lot there. Actually, I was impressed by the scope of all of the targets that are talked about within the biodiversity text. And it does go beyond species. But I like, just to take an example, I would like to know, can we agree on the fact that the caribou are hurting, not because they're being hunted by wolves, right? But because they're losing their habitat because of logging, because of roads, because of construction. I mean, when it comes right down to it, and we have to make those trade-offs, we need to have a piece of policy and a piece of legislation that's going to have some accountability, where we can say, look, at caribou or the road. I'm really heartened by this idea of cumulative impacts, and I know that the courts in BC have just affirmed that in the case of a major of Indigenous land rights case up north. So I think CBD and the way that it applies in Canada should take account of cumulative impacts, not just species by species.
Yeah.
So what are the cumulative impacts of loss of habitat, loss of ecosystems on the species that inhabit those areas?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm seeing hope. I'm seeing things are changing. You know, the way that the law is interpreting these damages is important. But at some point, we have to have some time-bound, clear targets with accountable, where we can audit and say, look, that's what we're lacking right now with Sarah. Sarah doesn't do that. You know, Sarah says, alarm, alarm, but nothing really changes, and it takes so long for the policy to filter down to the actual action level.
Yeah. So and there's no consequence.
There's no consequence. Yeah.
So Rosalind, can I move on? I can
Yeah,
listen
sure,
to you
sorry.
for a long time. That's okay.
I
I love it.
know.
I love it. I love it. So
I tend to do this.
this is good. I'm in your wheelhouse for sure. So
Yeah.
and it's Maya, right? Maya?
Yes, that's right. It's Maya.
Thank you.
I really like the idea of bringing in the conversation around co-benefits. The pessimistic part of me recognizes that with limited amounts of time and focus on the upcoming elections and a focus on meeting the demands of Social Innovation Canada, I think we're really going to come up against conflicting priorities in the same departments that will need to be scheduling these meetings and having these conversations. So if there are ways for us to be looking at how other countries are handling the approach to co-beneficial emphasis, say, for an example, looking at something like Project Drawdown's approach. I was just thinking here, I was just actually making some notes to myself here, and I can stick them in the chat. I think there's these are not Canadian specific, but certainly some of the water and quite a lot of the overarching impact on the decline in biodiversity crosses the international border between the United States and Canada, obviously, whether that's the land border or the water. So I think that looking at some of the work that's steeped in the complexity of the conversation at the intersection of business and climate change and conservation, they certainly have prepared some documents that help to craft the call for conversations between citizens and their governments and corporations. So I would love it if we could perhaps look at some of these kinds of examples that are available to us to help us in crafting our response. And I wanted to offer that certainly we don't specifically have a biodiversity caucus within the West Coast Climate Action Network, but Rosalind obviously has posted quite a bit in the Slack channels there, and both Rosalind and I manage the LinkedIn page for We Can. So if there are calls to network response, I think that both of us are in a place that we could be able to craft some samples of the kinds of things that people can be thinking about in the open-ended questions. Sort of consider this types of posts. So I just wanted to offer that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. This is great. So I've lost my list again. Hang on. Oh my God. Close this. Okay. Chris.
You know, I'm sorry, I'm kind of busy just thinking about not only the biodiversity, but the absolute, I mentioned this to Rosalind, I'm just floored that COP would be held in Turkey, given the atrocities against Armenians by the Turkish people. And the fact that they've been blocking any sort of support to help Armenians, not only Armenian people, but their environmental issues that they're struggling with. So sorry, I kind of got just a little bit waylaid with that, as well as all the biodiversity issues, because it's just a little overwhelming. So I'd suggest you go on to somebody else.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. I'm just making sure I'm right. Yeah, it's in Turkey. So, and I'm married to an Armenian, so I know a lot about the Armenian, well, quite a bit about what has happened. But John Coombs. Unmute yourself, John. That
Sorry.
bloody button. That's okay.
Once again, button problems, and I had something covering it this time. Anyway, I think this has been a good, well, more than good conversation, and I can feel a consensus. The problem is the consensus is large, and we'll have to pick by dint of time the number of points we want to make. But I can agree with everything that's been said. I agree with, especially with Roz, and the need for audit and evaluation and I would add to that, as I initially did, examine the process should go on during the projects, that if something is going wrong, we don't want to come the deadline and say, well, we tried, but we failed. Well, they should have had that conversation, whoever the group is, be it civil society, government, or industry, about halfway through or less than halfway through the period that it was promised. So what I can offer up is still remaining contacts within Statistics Canada, and Pierre Souillard, who heads up the census of the environment. And I'm going to make a trip to Ottawa unfortunately, it will probably be in September. So it's not going to be time for factoring into this discussion, but I intend to speak to him and speak for the, and additionally to the chief statistician, which I know on from past, he was an acquaintance, and given the time I've gone, he has risen and has been there for 6 years. So if they can be of help, I would suggest one thing about Ottawa, and it applies to the provinces as well as any large organization. They, even given the objectives, even given project plans, there tends to be confusion of, I thought I was supposed to do that. No, you, up to this point, that's your cutoff. And so it needs to be managed. And I hope that ECC and the provinces, notwithstanding departmental differences, and from the outside, its portrayal is we work together. And well, in most cases, on the big cases, you do, but when it gets down to particular details, every department has a a way of proceeding. So I think that's a message it would have to be delicately put, but it's there. And I think that's in terms of the challenges, both federal, provincial, and within either provinces or the federal government is interdepartmental. Once you've got a project that stretches across departments, as this one does, that we should, and I don't know what the solution is. I have quite a few suggestions, but anyway, a different time. Sorry.
That's okay.
And,
So, John, we have to adopt bureaucrats and politicians is what we need to do, and
I
departments.
think absolutely,
Yeah.
up to from the Director General up through Assistant Deputy Minister and Deputy Minister, because they're the people that give the minister briefing material. And, and the difference can be a non-appointment when you ask for to review something or discuss something with your topics, if they don't know and are on side with what the message is. Anyway.
So I know the with the SEPA file, with the communications, education, and public awareness, like that one person in the federal government who's supposed to be communicating across all the departments, like that's a big job, and we can definitely maybe
on immediate big issues, if there are multiple departments involved, but on something like this, an ongoing program, they might have, as a suggestion, a interdepartmental steering committee.
Correct.
To supervise, and they should have managers, project managers in each department who are accountable for the results. I would suggest that it not be diffused.
So actually, John, that would be awesome just to write that bundle. So I think what we can do too is just write the bundles of things we think can happen, should happen, or could happen. And even though you're going in September, this is just the beginning. We will have until the middle of, we have till the middle of next year probably before they're coming out with final, we're teeny tiny ahead of the curve, not completely behind the curve. Not running, where's the curve? Oh my God, I'm never going to catch it. So I think we got some of it going.
Okay.
But
other than that, I'll put on paper.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. So, and then I think, who's my next target? Hannah. Pretty sure it's Hannah.
Well, I mean, I think this has been one of the best presentations and discussions that I've sort of seen with all of us coming together. So it's just been really great. I think we've had some really great ideas, and I've been reflecting a lot on, I guess, some aspects where I could see myself digging in or supporting, being in a supporting role. I do have a lot of ties and connections, more so in the prairies and the grasslands. That's where I did my master's research. And I also think this is a great opportunity for us to get creative about the education and communication aspect. And I had a short 1 year position at the Assiniboine Park Zoo in Winnipeg, and even just reflecting on the opportunities there, that was my first time in that type of environment, that they aren't directly an ENGO, but they have a conservation and research department. They collaborate with other organizations like Nature Canada. So even just sort of thinking in lines with that and thinking about, you know, as you were saying, Leslie, like which communities, which people are we not reaching, or how can we get other voices heard? And I think there's a lot of room for some creativity there, and figuring out ways where we can empower, really, like you're saying, like at more local levels, at like a smaller scale, so that momentum can sort of go from like the ground up. So we have these sort of pressures meeting in the middle, where we have that grassroots momentum, and then we also have federal groups that are providing resources, whether that be financial or otherwise, whether those even be like creating consequences, you know, for people who yeah, just, you know, that kind of thing. So that's sort of where my head's been at, but I took a lot of notes. I just think this has been really great. But yeah, those are my points that I could come up with more succinctly, and I'm sure there'll be other things coming up later on. I'm a processor. I usually need time to really digest material. So. You're muted, Leslie. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think too, so in Canada, we had a business and biodiversity network for a long time. So, but it kind of fizzled because the leadership at that point, great guys, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't work, right? And they weren't engaging enough, and it was too, Roz, block your ears. It was too much of an academic exercise. So if it's not action-based and actually doing stuff, so I mean, there's huge, for me, there's huge, I've always been there. Anyone who's known me in this place for any amount of time knows, like, I'm just so into this and believe it so fundamentally, from my toes to the top of my hair, like my whole fiber is there. But the yeah, I think all those points are wonderful. So I mean, creating the resources for us to all share. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's half the time it's just sifting through and saying, well, how does this work? And so I posted in the chat the Ontario Biodiversity Strategy. So we just completed it and launched it on Biodiversity Day. But the Toronto Zoo is a member of our council. So we went to the Toronto Zoo. But I'm so sad Chantal's gone, but I'm going to go to Sheila. And then I think we've been at this for a while now, and I'm getting tired, and I kind of there's a bio break for Leslie coming up shortly. But Sheila?
Yes, so there are a few comments that I have. First of all, well, thank you for walking us through it. I think it was really great for us to, start looking at it together collectively. I'm not happy with surveys. This government has been very fond of making it look like they're consulting with people, and they use surveys to do that. And in the context of biodiversity and our knowledge that everything is interconnected, just this whole thing of picking which ones you should concentrate on is frustrating. I mean, maybe it's a fair enough question, but the way things fall apart is thread by thread. You can have something that looks really healthy, but there's a thread or two that's starting to go, and so if you ignore some of those threads, then so that's my frustration with surveys, I could say on a positive note, I guess the survey, or not, I guess, I feel that the survey is constructive in some way in that it's giving people a lot of things to read and they can see all that we have to consider. I think our emphasis should be on our written response, and I think that we should be asking questions about how soon we can have a promised consultation, and that when we have that consultation, also to make it known that we want to have 1 or 2 point people in ECCC that we can have ongoing conversations with, and a very friendly, open door back and forth. One of the people was responding that she is in Ottawa and, could be talking to people during the summer as we decide things that we need to be talked about. That's really helpful to know. I don't know, Cass, if you have the guiding principles handy there, but I was looking at the first of the guiding principles, when it was saying, at best, we can only hope to achieve a minimum, some words like that. And I thought that just makes me so discouraged, because we can't be looking at best. We're only going to be able to do a little bit. We can't even be having this exercise if we're going to say that. We need to be leaping. We know we need to be leaping. And if we have to be the ones that keep saying that to them, then that's what we're going to have to say. But, and then the contribution agreement idea, I think that it should be separated out from all of this survey stuff. And somebody should be getting in touch with the department right away and saying, we have had substantive discussion, just an initial discussion. There's so much interest in this topic, but this is the kind of thing in the past that we would have had, 2 full days minimum face-to-face of consultation to chew out some of this stuff. And government people would have been there listening to us. And then we would have been putting our report together after that. And so expecting us to come up with this fulsome stuff unsupported is not good. So those are those. The pollution part, it was one of the ones that I zeroed in on that I definitely think needs to be included in our initial 5 choices, because, pollution is responsible for so much biodiversity loss and kills a lot of us, and we can consider ourselves among them. I was very glad, Roz, that you brought up cumulative effects, and it didn't seem for anything that we could just, glance our eyes over. I didn't see those words on there. And cumulative effects goes right along with the pollution thing. So, that those 2 things are very much of interest to me. You and John were joking back and forth, but we need to adopt some of these people. Well, my idea when we're going after the contribution agreement and so on, and letting them know that we want a consultation ASAP, maybe we could adopt an ADM. We need some, a deputy minister couldn't do it, too much to do, but an ADM, because after that you get down to DGs who, that again, they're siloed out, within the department. So those are my my comments. And thanks again, Leslie, for having the vision to be able to figure out how to bring this to us and get us started on it. I'm not sure that each of us filling out the survey individually I don't know that we should do that. I mean, we could fill out the survey, but we could say it was from all of us and give them a list of groups and networks and, numbers.
So, and I think so Sheila, when you're talking, I put some notes in the chat. So I have your intervention at 8:10. So I think so this is the beginning. So between now and like September, we're kind of in consultation on what it should look like. And then afterwards, we're doing the consultation on what are the goals and targets, right? So that draft will come out at some point. So I think the idea of making sure there's fulsome, so I'm thinking that there's fulsome engagement across the country through the RCN, through the affiliates across the country. So trying to bring together like 50 people in 8 different places or whatever, and do that as part of the consultation for them through the affiliates particularly. So you're kind of garnishing the information up together, right? So I think that might be palatable to some degree. And I think if we organize ourselves enough, that can happen. So I think right now, I think we should respond I think we should do all of it, but go after them. And then, but I also like, they should be like, I wish, what's his name? Roz, you know who I mean. He used to be on BCCIC. He was on the board. He had a really good line on how this idea of
Mike Simpson.
Yeah. So Mike's line. So Sheila was always the line on, here's what we are actually. We are citizens from across the country. Like Sheila, you say that so damn well. And Mike was really good at, yeah, but this is consultation when you do it this way, as opposed to the surveying and everybody fill out a form. And like those two elements, I've never captured that well, but the Sheila and Mike, for me, like they were there before I was, and you kind of like, that's the way it should be. But it's, so yeah, so I think we need to figure out, I think this has been awesome, and there's people who have left, and I'll harass the crap out of everybody who didn't get an intervention. But what do we do next? Like, where do we go? So Cass had to step away. She hasn't eaten dinner. Her dog was chewing on her leg outside.
She could have been chewing on the dog's leg too.
That should be, yeah. It's about, mi casa es su casa, right? We'll share here. But so she stepped away. But what do we do? Like, how do we go forward from here? So do we have another like email for sure and communicate out everything, and then in a week's time, like if everyone, I'm going to talk to Cass and maybe we can figure out a way everyone can pick 2 or 3 things they want to, or just write what you want to say. Like, I don't know what to do next, right? My brain is dumped in front of you right now. Oh, Chris has got her hand raised. Come on, Chris.
So just a quick thing. One thing that we found with our whole Rights of Nature campaign in Washington has been a little bit challenging. Just the whole issue of educating people has been our challenge, and we've been around since 2016. But the proclamations we've had signed by city councils and county councils has given us media attention that then allows us to educate people through our press releases and other things. So I'm wondering, how accessible is the press to the organizations that you're with to get information out to people who can then support biodiversity and changes in Canada to support nature?
So our press is really decimated in a lot of ways. When I think of what our press people used to be like, there's not a lot of environmental. There's a couple here and there. So we have the Newswire, Civision, or whatever it's called. We do some stuff. So Ol, who's not here, but he writes for the Hill Times all the time. So a couple of people here and there, but it's if you have any tips on how to do that, I don't know if anyone else has more intel, as they say, but I'm kind of, I try. And for me, it's word of mouth and it's local council and it's beating the bushes over, like saying the same thing. I have a button. Hi, my name's Leslie. I'm interested in the Convention on Biological Diversity. I think it's like a gene species ecosystem, restore, use fairly, share the benefits. Like people, like I have a button. I'm sure people want to run away sometimes now because I'm freaking like.
I think it would be really helpful if we could get proclamations signed on your side of the Salish Sea to help get more attention to the Southern residents. And by doing that, it will at least allow people to get a glimpse of rights of nature and other things. I mean, we're certainly not stopping here with just the Southern residents.
Yeah.
My whole goal is to eventually, hopefully before I die, get rights of nature recognized for planet Earth and all her inhabitants, excluding all the humans because they already have all the rights. But it just seems like it's been really beneficial to get some of that information. And even we just got a city in Oregon, the state of Oregon, that got very little press. It was ridiculous how little press that got. But our next state is hopefully going to be California soon. And we're just going to hold a press conference. So they can't avoid us. So I don't know if that's something you guys could do on your end, but I think it would be beneficial to bring attention to what's happening, help the Southern residents, and get word out about what is the rights of nature. And hopefully then people will start asking for more rights of nature initiatives.
So in Canada, there are, there is a couple of Indigenous groups have recognized the rights to water. So Magpie River, there's another river in Ontario on the Ottawa side, or no, maybe it's in Quebec. There's a rights of river for the Outaouais, which is the Ottawa River is underway. And then there's nationally, there's actually a movement through the NDP that is in the government on giving rights to the St. Lawrence River. So it's and I know, so you must know Stephen Wood.
No, I know you mentioned the name last time.
Yeah, so Stephen is in UBC and he does non-human rights and works with, I think he's your biggest, Roz must know him, but ally on the Canadian side. Sierra is very interested in rights of nature. The initial case came out of Sierra in the US way back when. And then if you look at the CBD, the UN Harmony with Nature site and everything that's going on there. So there's negotiators that we've talked to through the Global Biodiversity Framework, principally on rights of Mother Earth, rights of nature. And so this is we being, and then Sierra too, we just applied for a small grant to do rights for the St. Lawrence Credit River. So in last weekend, there was the Indigenous Water Walk. So a lot of what I think is going on in Canada is somehow tied to truth and reconciliation to some degree. So it's interesting. Like this is where I want to lay my hat too. So the Observatoire International de la Droit de la Nature de Québec. So OIDN. I'm going in French, translating to English. Oh my God, I'm really confused now. But they have, they're members of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. So I think Sierra is going to become a member of GARN. So we're at our next conservation. So I'd love to have conversations with you about this writ large too. And I think you're right. Like I think they tried in BC for not the Salish, but the orca, right? The killer whale. But it got shut down or something. I don't know. But this is, we should have a call just on the rights of nature. That should be one of our calls in the near future, just on the rights of nature.
Yeah, and it would also be good for us to draw attention to, parallels between the two countries whenever we can. The US and Canada have done you know, so we can get double whammies on either side of the border, and people get encouraged. People get encouraged by progress and success. And
So there's also the CEC, through NAFTA, whatever they call NAFTA, whatever it's called now. So the
Commission on Environmental Cooperation.
yeah, but it's not NAFTA anymore. Whatever the new NAFTA,
CUSMA.
whatever. But so working through CEC, because there's been a lot of work in Mexico on the rights of Mother Earth and rights of nature. So I think it's Latin American countries in a large sense are kind of leading it in a lot of ways. And then, yeah, so we're way off topic now. Well, not really, because I really do. Yeah, no, I know. But I really want to make that a focal point for what I know Sierra's making, like we're saying it, and Roz knows. Roz got us an intern who's probably going to research this, and she's going, "What happened?" It's hilarious, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, if there's one thing, I'm kind of with you in this idea of by the time I'm dead, I hope there's rights at least for.
Yeah.
That's the ego to eco. Actually, that's a whole other way, is how does this support eco democracy? Could be a whole conversation, right? And how do you get out in front of it and start, to the comments about, well, how do you actually make the change? And, it's all short term and that, well, there's lots.
I think that the declarations of the rights of the Salish Sea have been super effective, and congratulations to Chris and her organization for doing that. I would definitely support a campaign to get more Canadian municipalities. I'm pretty sure Burnaby would be, ground zero for that kind of thing. The problem that I've run into, Chris, we're just trying to get municipality to declare a climate emergency. The problem that we've run into with rights is that where Indigenous bands are behind it, it works, but where they're not, it's hard to move forward. And what we found here in the Okanagan is, because we thought about having Okanagan Lake, the rights of Okanagan Lake, but the First Nations, the West Bank First Nation said, no, we want to have our own process. We want to have a declaration of responsibilities, and we don't want to use the language of rights on that. So when that happens, it's really hard for us to move forward, because we'll end up arguing with the band, right? Where in the Magpie River case, that was an initiative brought forward by the band council, by the Indigenous people. So there's no one Indigenous people, there are Indigenous peoples, and they're different in different parts of the country, and they have different ways of seeing things and of doing things. And sometimes that strategy speaks and sometimes it doesn't. So, but yeah, I would absolutely I'm behind hugely what Chris is doing, and I think we can learn a lot from that, because she's gotten a lot of attention down there for that, and I think Canadians should hear more about it.
Yeah, I do too. And so there's a prophet, University of Ottawa. So May Craft, she is a water scholar and Indigenous, and she's done a new treaty for, I think it's Lake Winnipeg. She did the treaty for, so she's Cree from Manitoba, but she just got a UNESCO chair in looking at rights for water. So, and then I know Stephen was also doing some work. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he was looking at getting a SHIRT grant to do rights, and he's like very academic. So he's big brain, pointy head, right? But trying to,
I feel targeted.
As you should. But so, I mean, you kind of go, so I haven't talked to him in a long time, but it's because of him that we have rights of mother or rights of nature in the Ontario strategy.
Yeah.
It's because he went through the Menti exercise. Actually, that's what I should do is say, hey, you're not teaching over the summer. Why don't you come to the table? Looking at the Canadian shit, because that's what he did, and saying, where can we throw rights in there and let him
Yeah.
start the conversation with us. So that should be, because I think right now it's just what are the principles and the processes? What are we missing? It's not what's the content,
Yeah. I know.
right? So you've got time to kind of get ahead of their curve a little bit and say, well, here's the content we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but oh my God,
Oh,
shut me up.
yeah.
Throw me out the door.
Thanks,
I'm
everybody.
getting tired too, and it's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
late for you folks
Yeah.
back east.
Mhm.
It is.
9:30
Oh my gosh.
8:30.
in Halifax. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got to leave this open because is Cass back yet? No. So we're leaving the room open because she's going to come collect all the chat stuff
Okay.
and keep it. And I don't know what she's going to do. I said, do I close the room? She goes, no, you should probably leave it open because no, I'm not techie. Like,
Well, as long as
Are you-
it's protected.
You're the
yeah,
host, right?
so I think she made me host. Well, she's host and she's just not leaving.
I think you could close it out because it is being recorded. So you should
Yeah.
be able to close it out.
I don't know if do you get the chat when you close it?
Yeah, you could just save the chat though too if you want.
So I don't know how to do that. So
Yeah. The three dots at the bottom towards the right, you click on that
oh, I see them. Okay.
and you can save the chat.
Save chat. Oh my God.
I actually forgot we were being recorded, and everything we just talked about was recorded too.
That's
So
good. That's good. It's all good. So I can participate, can chat with no one. Oh, you can control everything, eh?
Exactly.
Oh my God. Okay, shush. Okay, save chat. And where does it save to? Oh, show and folder.
it saves if you go to your folder list.
I'm
It saves
doing
under
it.
Zoom.
It's in my documents under meeting saved chat. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. But now I want to make sure it opens. I'm
Okay, I'm gonna run. Thanks everybody.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thanks,
much,
everybody.
everyone.
Take care.
Me too.
Bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.